What's up, guys? UFC 255 just wrapped up and pretty good card. Really good fights on here, really good performances. I would probably say it lived up just to expectations. It didn't blow my hair back, but I wasn't disappointed at all with the card. We'll start with that main event. Deiveson Figueiredo submits Alex Perez in 1 minute and 57 seconds of the very first round. Well, first of all, what I gotta say is, this is the reason Deiveson Figueiredo headlined the card. I know there were a lot of people that were debating whether Valentina Shevchenko should have headlined the card. A lot of people are watching the card for her rather than Figueiredo. But now, after looking at the performances, everybody should probably come in agreement that Deiveson headlining the card was the right move. He's the finisher. He's the guy that could probably have a bigger name in the sport than Shevchenko will. Everybody should be a fan of this guy. The striking was pretty even for the most part. They were kicking each other a lot to the body. Deiveson took the southpaw stance, which opened up the power kick for each other. Alex Perez showed to be the better kicker overall, which is what I thought coming into the fight. He has busy kicks, always throwing it. But the fight really changed when Figgy eye-poked Perez. After taking a kick to the body, losing balance, reaching forward with his long arms, and poking Perez's eye, Perez then backed up to the cage, which allowed Figueiredo for the first time in the fight to start pressuring him. Right, once that eye poke settled in, Perez actually started to back up. From there, Figgy swung in a wild overhand right which missed. Alex Perez was able to easily see it coming because of no setup, go for the single leg takedown. He tried to dump him and then he pushed him against the cage. Figgy just showed to have really good takedown defense, better than ever before. If there's anywhere he's really progressing, it is his takedown defense, because when he came into the UFC and when he fought guys like Jared Brooks, I think Juicier Formiga, if I remember the fight correctly, he did not show great takedown defense. But stopping Perez's single leg the way he did was quite impressive, to be honest. And then when Perez pushed him up against the cage, that's where Figgy started to grab onto the fence. He grabbed it twice. The second time he grabbed it, he was given like one more second until he went in for that scissor sweep. He went for the scissor sweep and then into a leg lock. Perez sat back into it to throw a hammer fist. Sensing the danger, Figgy abandoned the leg and then started to roll over, giving up his back. Perez grabbed onto him, but while he was riding the leg, he had to ride the wave. Once Deiveson Figueiredo would roll over, Perez would have to follow him. Ultimately, because Perez was getting the body lock, he exposed his neck. Deiveson grabbed around with a guillotine, but did not have the guard in yet. He forced Perez into his guard rather than him getting under Perez himself. That is pretty tricky to do, man. You do not normally see someone do that. He was kicking out the legs of Perez to slowly get him into the guard, locked it up, and it was a wrap. The guy has a nasty guillotine choke, and he submitted multiple guys with it too. Remember when he got Tim Elliott in one? He is a pretty well-rounded fighter with a sense of wildness to him that everybody likes. But who does he fight next? 100% Brandon Moreno. That is the fight that should have happened on UFC 255. It should not have been Alex Perez. Perez should have fought someone else. And according to reports, because Moreno and Deiveson Figueiredo had fast fights, they didn't get hurt, they're healthy, they have both agreed already to fight next month on UFC 256 as the co-main event. That is very interesting and great news, to be honest. And as for Alex Perez, I'd like to see him fight Askar Askarov. I think it would be a really good fight. And then we go to the co-main event. Valentina Shevchenko defeats Jennifer Maia by decision. I'm going to talk about the commentating, but first about the fight. Shevchenko looked amazing. In the first round or so, she looked a little bit rusty. She took a long time off due to injuries, but nothing really out of the norm. The biggest difference that I noticed was her timing. She wasn't reacting in time like she usually does. She was missing some of her punches that she wouldn't have before. She was spinning in too close. That one spinning back kick to the body, she threw it in pretty close range, and Jennifer Maia was able to pressure her and put her up against the cage. It just seemed like she needed to get the feeling of the cage until the third, fourth, and fifth rounds came, where she started to absolutely dominate. She was starting to land that left hand. She was countering with a jab, laying that quick spinning back fist, and her trips were so powerful, man. I mean, I lost breath just watching Jennifer Maia get slammed like that. And ultimately, it was just a clear-cut, very good victory for Valentina Shevchenko. But that is not the biggest story of the fight. Unfortunately, I think the commentating stole the spotlight. The commentating that night was not the best I've ever seen. I mean, frankly, it was very distracting. It made you scratch your head like 1,000 times. It left you confused, like why did the commentator say this? It was specifically Joe Rogan, to be honest. He was incredibly biased for Jennifer Maia because she's the big underdog, right? For an example, when Valentina Shevchenko will land like a three-piece combination and snap her head back with jabs, all within like 5 seconds, but then Jennifer Maia returns with a big right hand which only grazes Shevchenko because Shevchenko's moving away from it, given the correct kind of angle she's moving on. What do you hear of that entire exchange? The only thing you hear is about Jennifer Maia's big right hand that connected, which it really didn't connect, and they're completely dismissing everything Shevchenko just did. The one that really caught me off guard and made me pay attention to the commentating, because I'm usually focused in, and a lot of times I don't even hear the commentators, was when Shevchenko landed a big left overhand, and then Rogan said, "Look how good of a chin Maia has." It's like, wait, what? That was a perfect time left hand, and she took off on a beautiful angle to land it. But the chin is what was noticeable? Well, Shevchenko's not a one-punch knockout artist, so I don't think it's really relevant to say that Maia has a great chin, because Shevchenko lands us on everybody, and everybody's taking it. You know, it's not like some big thing that only Maia was able to take. Or when Shevchenko was in the clinch, she got a body lock, and she was going to trip Maia. Instead of talking about the trip, Rogan was talking about the Kimura attempt that Maia, like, briefly for like 2 seconds went for and then abandoned it. Or the time when he was saying that Shevchenko looked like she was getting tired, which is crazy. Or she looked really slow in the fight, which is, again, crazy. She looked incredibly fast as I've ever seen. It was incredibly distracting, and I saw a lot of people notice it as well. And do you know what this was almost exactly like? Was Khabib versus El Iaquinta. Rogan's commentating tonight reminded me almost exactly what happened that night. When he was talking about what El Iaquinta was doing. He was throwing big right hands. They were all missing. He was stopping a few takedowns, which is to be expected. Obviously, Khabib is not going to hit every single takedown on El Iaquinta, who's a really good wrestler. Completely dismissing all of the jabs and front kicks that Khabib was landing. And then at the end of the day, Khabib won by like 50-43. It was the most lopsided decision in Khabib's entire career. It was the most dominant fight on scorecards Khabib has ever been a part of. Yet, Rogan's commentating made it seem like it was extremely close. That's what he did tonight too. It was a lopsided decision. Valentina Shevchenko won almost every single round very convincingly, yet almost the entire commentating was based on Jennifer Maia. He always has this underdog bias commentating going on. Whenever there's a big underdog and they're doing a couple things right against a dominant champion, he only focuses on what they're doing. Like, he doesn't even pay attention to what the dominant champion is doing. I understand why he does that. To make it more interesting, maybe to the casual fans. Then again, what casual fans watching UFC 255? But trying to make it seem like it's a closer fight than it actually is, and point out things that the underdog is doing that can give him a chance to victory. I disagree with this kind of commentating because it's not objective at all. It's not paying attention to everything that's going on. Personally, I love to hear if a dominant champ is doing things very well in the fight. I love to hear, look at the timing of Shevchenko's left hand. Look at that spinning back fist. You know, look at her trips. Look at all the... She did so many things so well. Some of it perfect, but you rarely ever heard it in the entire fight. And that's kind of a bummer, and maybe even seems a bit disrespectful to Shevchenko's craft and her performance. I mean, she tried. I mean, she's fighting one of the best fighters in the world. This is not supposed to be easy. Yes, the betting odds make it seem that way, but again, she's in the UFC fighting other UFC caliber fighters. And just for her performance to be dismissed, whereas the underdog is being completely focused on by the commentators, it is a bit strange. Now again, I do love Joe Rogan. He tends to have really good commentating at times, but not when there's a big underdog on the line. When there's a big underdog, that's when his bias really starts to show. But it could also be that he hasn't commentated in a pretty long time. He's pretty rusty. He has a ring rust, I guess you could say. But as for Valentina Shevchenko, to be honest, let's just do her versus Amanda Nunes. I think it's time, right? It can't be Zhang Weili because Zhang has a lot of fighters to face in that 115-pound division. It's a super stacked division. Nunes has like no opponents. Valentina Shevchenko has like no opponents. We should probably just do the third fight. And then we go to Tim Means defeating Mike Perry by decision. I think two judges scored it 29-28, which is what I had as well. I had Mike Perry win the first round, almost got the guillotine choke. And then the second and third round, Tim Means was just landing jabs, quick right hands, going to war with Mike Perry in that third round. That third round was insane, man. But ultimately, a lot of the story stems on Mike Perry. He did not look that good. Besides his grappling for the most part, his striking really degraded. I don't know if it's because he's not training. I don't know if it's because he doesn't have training partners. I don't know if it's because he's training himself. There's something going on in his training that is degrading his skills, that is really hurting his career. Because he was throwing arm punches. I have to look back at his fights probably, but I do not remember Mike Perry throwing arm punches like that. And it wasn't like one or two of them. It was like half the punches he threw. Very strange. No power in them at all. His striking looked very lethargic, very slow, unathletic. And ultimately, he was looking to brawl it out. And even when he got the brawl that he wanted, it was like an even fight because, again, he was throwing arm punches. His punches were a lot slower than ever before. And frankly, you look at his body, he's not as like ripped as he used to be, as jacked as he used to be. It looks like he has more fat on him. But ultimately, good performance by Tim Means. Did what he had to do. Just landing jabs at will, almost like target practice. Quick punches instead of big punches, landing straight as Mike Perry is landing looping. putting good pressure on Perry in the second and third rounds. But I see a lot of people thinking that if Mike Perry trained for the fight, he probably would have won this. I mean, he had a lot of opportunities to land. If he had a little bit more speed, he probably would have connected on Means a lot more. And he hurt Means a couple times in there too. And that purpose botch weight cut, I don't know if the UFC is going to take kindly to that, man. If he does it again, he might just get cut. Katlyn Chookagian was just showcasing her striking skills in front of everybody into a victory, and even Cynthia Calvillo was standing in front of her and watching all of it. So a lot of strikes getting thrown, most of them not landing, but at the end of the day, she did her job. Very strange that Calvillo almost never went for a takedown, but it might have been because of the volume, because of the constant strikes getting thrown at her face. She was just sticking at a distance for most of the fight. Paul Craig had a good performance against Shogun Rua. This is the rematch, and Craig looked way better. Fought to a game plan, adapted to this fight, changed it up, and went into a wrestling mentality. Just double legs constantly. I've never seen him commit with double legs the way he did tonight. And really, whoever was on top was winning. That's pretty much what it was. Whoever had the top control was dominating the fight. But because of Craig's wrestling, his youth, his strength, all of it together, he was able to impose his will and take control of the wrestling, which eventually took control of the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Got the back, hammered down on Shogun, and Shogun tapped the strikes. It is pretty heartbreaking to ever see Shogun tap the strikes. I think it's the second time he's done it. The first time was against John Jones. But we're talking about Shogun Rua, who's went to war with Dan Henderson twice. Went to war with Lil Nog, fought the who's who. Been in the game for such a long time, man. And this fight with Paul Craig was not like their first one. Amazing performance by Craig. Brennan Moreno had a very weird win over Brennan Royval. Ultimately ended with a shoulder injury in the first round. It looked like he was going to be competitive. Even though Brennan Moreno had the back and was going for that rear naked choke, the stand-up was on Royval's side, as Moreno was looking very sloppy to land his counter shots. And there's not much to say because it looked like the fight was going to continue at a very fast pace. Moreno and Royval are very good second and third round fighters. And we were kind of robbed out of that, as Moreno's probably going to get a title shot. Hopefully Royval gets another big fight. He fought the #1 contender tonight. Maybe he even gets Alex Perez. Maybe he gets Askar Askarov. Maybe he gets Joseph Benavidez if Benavidez still wants to fight. I don't know if he's booked though. And of course, Joaquin Buckley just letting the hands go on Jordan Wright. This is kind of how I thought the fight would have went. Just pressure Jordan Wright. He doesn't react that well to it. You just got a quick knockout doing that pretty much. Jordan Wright's a pretty nice guy, man. I didn't want to see him get hurt like that. Yeah, because that was a pretty bad knockout. But Joaquin Buckley is living up to his hype a little bit. Not too long ago, he did lose to Kevin Holland, and Holland is letting everybody know. He's letting everybody remember that. I knocked this guy out like 2 fights ago. I mean, Holland landed one of the sharpest, most picture-perfect right hands of the entire year. Not a lot of power, all precision. Just landed it clean, right on the button. And it's pretty interesting how the middleweight division is shaping up with these young guys. Kevin Holland and now Joaquin Buckley going at it, making like this rivalry. They're brewing something up, and that makes it very exciting. But it seems like Buckley wants to fight James Krause. And that would probably only happen in the welterweight division, right? Unless Krause goes into that BMF mentality, or whatever he calls himself. I forgot what he calls himself when he goes and just jumps weight classes and doesn't care who he fights. But if he comes up to middleweight and fights Buckley, that's a gangster move, man. But that should be interesting. That should be the next fight. So that is the end of the video, guys. I hope you guys enjoyed it. And if you did, make sure to thumbs up. If you enjoyed my content, make sure to subscribe. I have to push back my live podcast a bit. So I'm going to do it on Monday. I might be able to do it Sunday night. Maybe. I'm going to keep you guys updated on that. And I'll see you guys then.